take your ideals and take them out to places where your ideals are not being met, and particularly when it concerns criminal acts being committed by governments. And I was a part of the problem for many years of my life. I mean, as you detailed, I was in the U.S. military for 29 years. I was then a U.S. diplomat for 16 years. I served under 8 different presidential administrations, starting with the Lyndon Johnson administration back during the Vietnam War. That's when I joined the military. So all the way through the Nixon years, the Carter years, the who's next? Reagan years, and then the Bush years, and then the Clinton years, and then the Bush years. I mean, while I was in the U.S. government, how many of you all were out protesting something the U.S. government was doing during those times? And I would suspect every hand will probably go up. I mean, because there were terrible, terrible policies that the United States was following, terrible programs that we had. But I didn't resign. I only resigned 10 years ago. In fact, next month it'll be 10 years that I will have resigned. It wasn't that I fully believed every single thing that all these presidential administrations were cooking up, but I, like so many people who decide that they're going to have a career in the government, you end up holding your nose to a lot of things that these various presidential administrations do. How many of you all know somebody that's served in the federal government, or some level of government? In your family, your friends? I mean, you all know, and generally they're pretty good people, but sometimes they are in administrations that aren't so good. But in the United States, I don't know quite what it is here in Ireland, but in the United States we really don't have a very strong ethical base in terms of training young people to say, if you really see something that's going wrong, whether it's in the government, whether it's in the military, whether it's in a corporation, whether it's in a university, or wherever it is, that if you see something going wrong and you try to fix it within the system and you can't fix it, then you might consider getting out of it and letting people know about it, and even resigning over it. But we don't really have that in the United States, and I was a part of that system. I knew things were wrong that were going on in these various administrations. I mean, starting with the Vietnam War. I mean, I didn't join the Army during the Vietnam War to go to Vietnam. How many of you all have ever served in a military? A couple of people.
Did you say paramilitary? That might be.
There you go. That's a very good point, because sometimes I think the paramilitary forces around the world have sometimes a little bit better dedication on a clearer view of what people that are joining paramilitary units have than people that are just joining a military unit. I didn't join the Army to go kill people. I joined the Army to get the hell out of the state of Arkansas where I was living. That was why I joined it. I wanted to go travel, see the world. My family didn't have any money. And when the Army came through town, and I was being trained as a teacher, and I don't want to offend any of you teachers, but that was the last thing on earth I wanted to do. I didn't want to teach school. I wanted to go travel. I wanted to go see the world. And when the Army came through, and even during the Vietnam War, it was join the Army, see the world. And for the guys, it was going to Vietnam. For most of the women, except the nurses, you might see other parts of the world. So that's kind of how I got into the military. And then I ended up staying a long time in it. And then I moved over to the diplomatic corps, where you really are. You're a representative of the United States, then your official job is to explain the policies of whatever person it is that the United States elected as president of those United States. And we have elected some doozies. Oh my goodness. Some of the policies that you all have been protesting, and all of my best friends in the United States are people who have been challenging U.S. policies as American citizens. They've been challenging these policies all of their lives, starting with, well, depending on how old they are, you know, certainly from the Vietnam War on forward. And the clarity of vision that they have had on what they believe is right for the world, or right for the United States, was much clearer, I think, than what I had when I was in the government. And it was much, my vision was much cloudier than, I would say, the young man that you mentioned, Bradley Manning. Bradley Manning, a private first class in the U.S. military, who allegedly has downloaded the largest number of State Department and military cables and messages, I think, in the history of the world. I mean, I've read more diplomatic cables on WikiLeaks than I ever read as a diplomat. I mean, it's been fascinating to me to see what's come out about what my government was doing in various parts of the world. And I don't know if you all have been keeping track of the specific cables from the U.S. Embassy in Dublin to Washington about what was going on, the talks that were going on with the members of the Irish government. And I don't know if you were aghast at some of the things that you found out. And it's not all over yet. I mean, WikiLeaks still has more stuff. They just haven't posted it yet. So stand by for more. But Bradley Manning, a young man who, you know, on one level, it is, you know, the United States has such a trove of classified documents, and now everything the U.S. government does is classified, so they can make sure that they scare everyone in the U.S. government to not release anything, that you're going to be treated just like that Bradley Manning who now has been in jail almost 1,000 days. Young man who served the first year in conditions under the U.S. military that were similar to what was going on to Abu Ghraib. The United States military was treating one of our own soldiers who was accused of criminal acts but not convicted in a pretrial confinement situation in the same manner that we were terribly treating and illegally and criminally treating other people in other parts of the world. Well, there were several of us that got arrested, and of this crowd, I mean, my arrests have been tiny little points where we tried to bring the attention of the American press to some issue. And one of the places we got arrested was at Quantico Marine Base, where 400 of us had gone down to a rally to challenge the U.S. Marine Corps as they were holding this young man in a Marine Corps cell, giving him none of the pretrial hearing rights, keeping him generally naked in his cell, trying to put pressure on him in every way, as we've done with people in Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo and places like that. Well, there were 400 of us that went down to Quantico, which is about an hour south of Washington, D.C., and one of the people that was with us was Daniel Ellsberg, the whistleblower from Pentagon Papers time. And as we, Daniel, myself, and two other, Daniel's a veteran of the Vietnam War. He was a Marine in the Marines, and we had a World War II vet and an Iraq vet, and the four of us walked across the main road to the front gate of the Marine Corps base, and we were supposed to be putting flowers at the base of the Marine Corps monument, which kind of, well, it was symbolic. That's what it was. Well, the police, you know, sometimes the police act in your favor. They are so stupid that something happens that, you know, things happen after that. And we got there, we couldn't even put these flowers at the base of the thing. They said, no, you can't even go over to that monument. I said, we're all vets, come on, what's going on here? You can't go over there. You have to put those flowers right here on the road. I was like, put them on the road? That's not right. So we just ended up sitting down in the middle of the road, and our 400 colleagues over on the other side of the fence hopped the fence and for the next 3.5 hours, we occupied the intersection. And when finally the police, the Gestapo police, I mean, I've never seen anything quite like this one. They had the horses out, and then they had the goose-stepping guys that, you know, the Star Wars, whatever, you know, the stormtroopers coming to take us away. But that incident, that time where 34 of us got arrested at Quantico made national news, and primarily because Dan Ellsberg was part of it. But 2 weeks later, the Marine Corps and the Army released Bradley Manning from that facility and put him in an appropriate pretrial confinement facility where he is kept with other pretrial accusees, where he does have reasonable clothing, he has reasonable food, he has contact with everyone else. I mention that because it is 1,000 days that young man has been in jail. His court-martial, I've been to many of his pretrial hearings. There have been about 10 of them so far, where his defense attorney is trying to elicit in each of those hearings more information about what the government has and how they're going to present it in the court-martial. The court-martial is now scheduled to take place on June 4th. June 4th. So we're keeping our